Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Welcome to this month's Sustainability Practice Group call. With that, I can hand it over today to Richard and Mark. If you want to Mark, if you wanted to add anything before we get started, and Richard, your screen is already up, so feel free to start presenting if we're ready to go. Mark and Richard, over to you.
All set. Up to you, Richard.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. Energy modeling, commissioning, the Forest Stewardship Council. Since the first building projects became LEED certified in 2000, concepts like these have gone from niche interest to being used on tens of thousands of building projects worldwide. While larger trends are also responsible, widespread adoption of LEED rating systems from the U.S. Green Building Council has arguably been the biggest driver. After primarily a structural upgrade in LEED 2009, USGBC is trying to convince the building industry that it's time to push ahead with more innovative concepts in greening our buildings, even as it continues to fine-tune the bedrock LEED requirements. It has been a tough sell. After 6 public comment drafts, USGBC scrap plans for launching LEED in 2012, pushing a planned member ballot on the system back to 2013 and renaming it LEED version 4, built to perform. Here are learning objectives for the day, underlying principles guiding LEED 4, performance connections, product transparencies, and new concepts in IEQ. Although there's a lot of hubbub about the changes in the MR category, the LEED EQ category is even more complicated. So why is LEED doing this? Definitely raising the sustainability bar and to drive market transformation. The shift is from avoiding negative impact categories to improved environmental outcomes. And has LEED changed the marketplace? I'd say it has. 77 chapters, 13,000 member organizations and companies, LEED programs in 145 countries, 181,000 LEED APs, and 64,000 LEED global green building projects that span over 10 billion square feet. And added to that, 1.6 million square feet per day is certified worldwide. Out of that, which 42% is buildings outside of the U.S. So it has become worldwide. How many rating systems are there now? 21. When I first read this in the trade journal, I had to go look this up myself, and indeed there are 21. As you can see, there are 4 families of rating systems: the building design and construction, interior design and construction, building operations and maintenance, and neighborhood development. In the first category, building design and construction, there are 4 newcomers: warehouses and distribution centers, data centers, hospitality, and multifamily low-rise. There are 3 rating systems under interior design, 6 under building operations, and 2 under neighborhood development. So it really has expanded. The new Credential logos, most people are in the building design and construction. Matt, can you see my cursor on the screen?
Yes, we can.
No?
Yep,
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Richard, yes, you can see your cursor.
Thank you. The biggest category is the building design and construction, and the next one would be interior design and construction. And interesting enough, LEED AP operations and maintenance, they recently passed the square footage of new construction. So there's more operation and maintenance LEED projects than there are, and square footage, I should say, than there are in building design and construction. So that's a huge market. Here are the stats for LEED APs. The majority of you have decided not to upgrade, 111,000, and this is slightly outdated. It's 2011. It's around, the total now is about 181,000. But this gives you the idea of how the numbers are broken down. Sorry about that. The biggest category being LEED AP around 34,000. Building design and construction has most of those, the next one being interior design and construction. And out of the top 5 professions, architecture has the most. Specifications writer probably would fall into this category. And then there's construction management, mechanical engineering, project management, interior design. And I'm surprised that landscape architects are not in this top 5 professions. So out of these top 5 professions, there's 90,000 LEED APs. That means there are 70,000 other allied professions who hold a LEED AP. So it shows you that LEED truly has encompassed a very broad marketplace. The evolution of version 4, 23,000 public comments, 6 drafts. That's never happened before. Over 3 years. In spite of all the controversy, 86% of the consensus body has approved this version 4. This third bullet is important, although it is available to use now if you really feel like being challenged. It does not become effective until June 2015. So LEED 2009 can be used up to that time. And LEED version 4 won't become mandatory until 2015. It maintains the same structure, but emphasis is more on accountability and performance, and it's moved away from performance-based criteria rather than check the box. Some new terms: LID, low impact development in sustainable sites; SDA, spatial daylight autonomy in indoor air quality; CDPH, you'll see a lot of on the low-emitting materials, California Department of Public Health. That will be the new umbrella standard for all low-emitting materials. EPDs, environmental product declarations, which we'll go into detail, as well as HPDs, health product declarations. SAN is analogous to FSC. It is Sustainable Agricultural Network for non-forestry materials. BEC is Building Envelope Commissioning under the new Enhanced Commissioning Credit. And BUG stands for Backlight, Uplight, and Glare for Light Pollution Reduction Credit. Under version 4, the revised credits and prerequisites are guided by these 6 impact categories: global climate change, human health, water resources, ecosystem services, regenerative material cycles, green economy, and community quality of life. This shows that LEED is going beyond the walls of the building. The first credit in the new checklist, and this will not be a point-by-point review. There's not enough time in 1 hour to cover every credit. I'll just give highlights in some of the categories, and my focus will be on the MR category and the EQ category, especially as they relate to building materials. So the first credit, which is by itself for a reason, doesn't fit under any category, because the intent here is that integrated process be used throughout the whole rating system. And in the first draft, it was referred to as integrated process. They changed it because that integrative connotes that it's ongoing, and integrated assume that you're all done. So this is an ongoing process, and the name change was adequate. It identifies and uses the opportunities to achieve synergies across disciplines and building systems, and it uses this information to inform the OPR, BOD, and design construction documents. For those of you who are not familiar with these two terms, they're very critical documents for the commissioning agent. They stand for Owner's Project Requirements and Basis of Design. The first category is a new category in LEED version 4. It's location and transportation. It's borrowed from LEED for neighborhood development. It addresses larger scale land use issues, and it allows sustainable sites category to focus on issues specific to the project site. One of the credits under this new category is LEED for neighborhood development location. If you choose a site within a certified LEED for neighborhoods, you earn up to 16 points. That's more points, well, not more, but almost as many as optimized energy performance. There you can earn 18 points. And the reason being that the impact on how we get to work and how we get around the site has that much of a carbon footprint that it's worth giving 16 points for this one credit. Now you have the option here, you can choose the first credit or one of the other 7 credits, but either way you would the maximum amount of points would be 18. I will discuss a few on the sustainable sites. This is one of my favorite, rainwater management, as opposed to stormwater management, which is an emphasis on getting rid of water. This new term treats rainwater as a resource. And the way the credit works is that you have to manage 95% of the local rainfall events throughout the year, as opposed to the worst storms in the year. So rain falls, for the most part, in half-inch, 1-inch amounts, and the intent of this credit is to capture that small rainfall events on the site rather than have it run off. And although it does address worst case storms as well, the emphasis is on smaller rainfall events. And this way, you're able to overall utilize that rainwater over the entire year rather than focusing on worst storms. And the way they do this is low impact development, the new term, LID, in green infrastructures are the tools, rain gardens over swales, blue roofs instead of holding ponds. Blue roofs are roofs that capture rainwater into a holding tank and then used for irrigation and in some cases for flushing toilets. This methodology has been used very successful in Chicago under the Green Roof Program, the largest green roof program in America, and in Philadelphia's Rainwater Control Infrastructure Program, where they use sidewalk planters, rain gardens, and empty lot conversions to capture their rainwater and hence reduce their stormwater impacts. Light pollution reduction has had an overhaul. Excuse me. The new prescription path is the bug method. Backlight, uplight, and glare. And the way this works is you match the light fixture to the light zone. Light zones are divided into major metro areas, commercial industrial areas, residential light industrial, and rural national parks. So as long as you choose the right light fixture for the lighting zone, then you would earn the credit as opposed to the performance path, which was a very complicated path that most projects hated to attempt because they could do the right thing but just be 1 foot candle over on a boundary and not get the point. So the performance path will probably go away and people will choose the prescriptive path. Water efficiency has 4 credits and 1 new prerequisite, outdoor water use, 2 new prerequisites, outdoor water use reduction and water metering. The water metering prerequisite, using the motto, what gets measured gets managed, requires water meters for building and associated grounds, commit to sharing with you as you see the whole project water usage data for a 5-year period. That's similar to what we have now, but it wasn't mandatory. You have meters now. It is mandatory on the LEED version 4. And connects buildings, occupants, and facility management with water impacts of their actions and management. Cooling tower water use. This one's important because oftentimes in building projects, the cooling tower water usage is more than the entire rest of the building. Conserve water use by cooling tower makeup while controlling microbes, erosion, and scale in the condenser water system. Conduct a one-time potable water analysis in order to optimize cooling tower and evaporative condensers. And this means that if the water is still somewhat clean, it recycles through the cooling tower versus being dumped down the sewer. And there are examples of these systems as is shown here on the left, ultra-efficient evaporative condenser. Energy and atmosphere will touch a few highlights. There is definitely tougher energy requirements. Although it's only a 5% improvement over ASHRAE as opposed to 10% now, the overall, as I'm told by the chemical engineers, it's a 20% difference in energy performance for the entire building. So it is more stringent. Right now it's 10%. With this new ASHRAE 90.1 2010, it will be a 20% improvement over a baseline case. Energy metering prerequisite, similar to the water metering prerequisite. What gets measured gets managed. There's been a study by the New Buildings Institute that shows that 25% of LEED-rated buildings were found to perform below original design projections, and I'll have a link to this site at the end of the PowerPoint if you want to look into it in more detail. The LEED version 4 now has the building energy metering as a prerequisite. As a lot of people know, there was a lawsuit against LEED claiming that their buildings were not as efficient as other buildings. That, of course, didn't go anywhere, but I'm sure this was a result that the LEED wants to now be sure that the buildings are actually performing as designed. One of the new credits under EA is demand response. This, of course, is not new with manufacturers. They do it already, but it would be new for building owners. And what happens here, the peak load requires additional power plants to come online or less efficient plants to be used. So it softens that peak load, or what they call demand smoothing. So instead of having the peak between noon and 6, it spreads it out in the early morning and later in the afternoon, which lessens the need to have less efficient power plants online. It requires a 1-year DR contract with a qualified provider for 10% minimum of the project's estimated peak electrical load. And this is an example of one in action. Here's a clothes dryer that's on a demand response if there was a demand that would shut off and come on later, or it would turn the dryer on earlier in the morning. Green power and carbon offset credit has drastic change in its requirements now based on total energy as opposed to just electrical energy. It's a minimum of 5-year term as opposed to a 2-year term. It does offer more options for offsets. You can use green power, RECs, or carbon offset options. And either option requires green energy or climate certified power. Examples of carbon offsets would be reforestation projects in Tanzania, methane capture in Colombia, and geothermal energy in Turkey. Material and resources, the category you've all been waiting for. On this one, I'm just going to give you the general requirements and go to some props that help to understand that these are fairly complicated. I'm trying to present them in a light that can be understood. They should be studied in more detail once you start using this LEED version 4 rating system. There are 3 credits under Building Product Disclosure and Optimization. And those 3 are environmental product declarations, sourcing of raw materials, and material ingredients, and we'll go through each one in detail. The first one, EPDs, requires you 20 different products sourced from 5 different manufacturers. So this is no longer on a dollar value. It's on the number of different manufacturers. And the intent here is to level the field to allow big companies to participate in this LEED credit as opposed to large companies and it being based on dollar amounts. And there's a second option, and you can use a combination of the two. That should be clear to everyone. It can be a combination, doesn't have to be either or. The multi-attribute optimization option, there are some manufacturers that have this, third-party certified EPDs. And this one's based on cost at 50% of total cost. The products must meet 3 criteria, and I'll show this in the next slide, examples of these criteria. And if the product is within 100 miles of the project site, you get double the value. Now this is replaces the 500-mile requirement. Now keep in mind this is in addition to. It's not solely based on the mileage from the project. Now very few products are going to be within 100 miles, maybe concrete, maybe synthetic gypsum if you happen to be near a coal-fired power plant, but very few projects are going to be able to capture this additional benefit, and it allows a double value. But it does not mean that you can't pursue this credit. It's just giving you more credit if you happen to get a product within 100 miles of your project, and that would include manufacturing and raw materials. So here are some examples of multi-attribute optimizations: global warming potential, depletion of stratosphere, formation of troposphere, depletion of non-renewable energy resources. And I'm going to go into a prop here. Here's an example of one of the version 4 templates. It's very intuitive. You choose your rating system. You choose your units, IP is inch pounds, SI is system international. And then you choose your path. You can either use one or two or both, and you get credits, points based on your results. The first part, the EPDs, again, is based on a weighted average, not on a dollar amount. So this is hypothetical. I just used 20 as an example. And the second part, multi-attribute optimization, is based on dollar amount, a percentage of the dollar amount, and this one is just chosen to be 50. So once you fill out the calculator, filling these in, very easy. And then you just sign it off and you're done. Well, not really. You first have to fill out the calculator. And I want to show an example of EPDs. They are out there. USG has one for wallboard, Armstrong for ACT, Mohawk for carpet, and Certainties for vinyl tile ceiling. So I'll give an example of an EPD produced by USG. It's for a ceiling tile. The program operated as UL environment. You'll see what that goes in a minute when we get to the calculator. It's It's for a declared product. It's not a across the board EDP for all products. And if you look at the life cycle impact categories, it meets 5 of the 6 categories. And what these EPDs are is a shorthand life cycle analysis. So it's really telling everything about the product. And there's your CDPH, California Department of Public Health standard showing up in the EPD. Here's where the materials come from. Walworth, Wisconsin, a project in New England certainly is not going to meet the 100-mile requirement here, and starts and stucco is even more broadly informed somewhere within the United States. I don't think many projects will pursue the MR credits based on proximity to the project anymore. And USG has a take-back program which gives you additional benefits from the point system, as you'll see in a minute. And here's the Building Product Disclosure and Optimization Calculator. This one I'm going to open for demonstrational purposes. And it's pretty involved. There you can see at the bottom there's 6 tabs. The first one being instructions. You enter your dollar amount here, and this is again hypothetical. This is the purpose of this example. Materials go here, and I used a USG ceiling tile, for example. Description of materials, the mineral fiber acoustical ceiling panel. I made up value of 20,000. Under here are the 3 credits: EPDs, sourcing raw materials, material ingredients. So once you complete this calculator, you get your credits for each one of these separate credit categories. So option 1 is whether you have an EPD, and I showed you that as an example. UL Environment is the provider. It's product specific. Let's say it was Industry UI generic, you would only get half the point. And if it was a industry-wide, you get a half point. But this one here was a type 3, so you get a whole point. Multi-attribute optimization is third-party certified by UL Environment. It's not within 100 miles, so you only get the face value of 20,000. Under sourcing of raw materials, this spreadsheet continues for that one product in the top line here. And here you'll see all the material attributes. And I encourage people to look at this, even if they don't fill out the forms, just to try to get a better understanding on how the credit works. Under leadership extraction practices, they does have a USG take-back program, so you get 100% for that. It does have bio-based materials at 8.3%. It has recycled content, both post and pre. It does not come within 100 miles, and so you get the face value here. And the calculator will, at the end, calculate all the results in the summary tag. And finally, the material ingredients, this is where health product declaration comes into play. There's also manufactured inventory or cradle-to-cradle options. And under certification program, I just chose green screen as an example, but there's also cradle-to-cradle and reach as options. And then finally comes the summary. You put this data into the LEED form, and then you're done. So it's pretty involved, and once you can gather all the information, you can fill up these forms and see where your points lie, but not easy.
Richard?
Yes, go ahead.
We have a question here on this specifically that may be a good time to cover. They were wondering do you get the point, or in the case you're showing here, half point, depending on what category you're looking at, of EPDs despite any of the environmental impact that it may have? Or is somebody on the USGBC side of things also analyzing what the EPD is and determining if the environmental impact of the product, even if it has an EPD, would void the credit allowed?
Well, that remains to be seen. You do not have to be third-party certified to gain part of the credit for those points. But whether you submit a EDP and then LEED rejects it, that remains to be seen. If they feel it doesn't meet the standards, and it's usually ISO standards, they could reject it. But we would not know that, you or I or a specifier, until LEED reviewed it and took that stand on it.
If the question has to do with the product itself, if asbestos and lead have EPDs, they would meet the criteria. USGBC is not going to judge on what products you're using. That's up to the design professional. There may be times when you have to use materials that otherwise you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, and then one last little thing
moving on
here. Oh, Richard, just one last thing here. Was wondering, and I believe, if I remember correctly, it's at the end of the slides, but there is a question, just want verification here. Is there access to the calculator you're showing or an online version of it that can be accessible to people to use?
Yes, and I'm going to show that live
in
a few slides. Okay. Sourcing of raw materials is the next building product disclosure and optimization credit. It's similar to the EPDs. It requires 20 different products from 5 different manufacturers, not based on dollar amount. And the second part of the credit, you can use one or both, is leadership and extraction practices options, and I'm going to show that in a minute. And then that one there is based on the dollar value. And it also has 100 miles within the project site valued at 200, as we talked about, but that's going to be very difficult. And here are those practices. Extended producer responsibility. A lot of manufacturers do have this, especially on the carpet and ceiling tile categories. Wood products, this standard is FSC. Bio-based materials is a new SAN, Sustainable Agricultural Network. Material reuse is a category. Recycled content is still a part of the LEED system, although it's less valued. You can get credit, but not as much as you did in the past. And then LEED has left it open for new programs that come on that they approve. And then finally, material ingredients has to do with the held product declarations. Same format. It's based on a weighted average of 20 different products across 5 different manufacturers. And the section option, material ingredient optimization options, we will see in the calculator. Sorry about that. So here are the programs, manufacturing inventory, HPD, and I'm going to show an example of that. Cradle to cradle, and the fourth option is left open for future standards. And here's the HPD from CertainTeed. Held product declaration. It's for a ceiling tile. And it tells you what's in the product, but doesn't tell you that if the material is good or bad. That's not the intent here. It's just that they're being transparent. And as an example, adhesives, no warnings found on the HPD priority list. It doesn't say that adhesive, you can eat that adhesive, but it tells you that it's not on the priority list. And that's all it's required for HPD at this point in time. Here's examples of the optimization paths: green screen, benchmark, cradle to cradle certified, international alternative compliance with the reach optimization, and the fourth, future approved program by USGBC, and you saw this in the calculator. And then indoor environmental quality, I have about 15 minutes. I think we're doing okay time-wise. This one has been totally revamped. As I mentioned, there's a new standard that covers all low-emitting materials. That's the California standard. In this new credit, you have to meet the threshold of compliance for emissions for 6 product categories. I'll show you that in the calculator. And you also have the budget calculation method for things like paints and adhesives that would be open in the job site. And those 5 assemblies I'll also show in the calculator. Here's the new standard, California Department of Public Health. It covers all low-emitting materials. The floor score, green label plus green, got all references CDPH method. It's also known as the 1350 section. In the second bullet here, the wet applied materials must be tested for emissions and VOC content. So whenever you have an open can on the job site, you have the additional requirement of giving the VOC content, similar to what we have now. We have the VOC content, but we don't have the first bullet requirement. And here's the low-emitting material calculator. On the instructions, they ask for furniture cost because if you include furniture on this credit and it's optional, you have to meet 90% of the dollar value of all furniture. So that's why they're asking for the dollar value. Otherwise, the cost of low-emitting materials are not included in this calculator. And this one is very handy. You can see South Coast 1113 limits right here on the calculator. South Coast 1168 limits. It also includes European, Canadian, and Hong Kong limits. So this is truly a global rating system. The products would be entered here. I just used PPG5 paint as an example. Categories would be interior paints and coatings. Emission criteria is taken from the instructions. The wall types here are the assembly types: walls, ceilings, flooring, thermal and acoustic insulation furniture, and for hospital and school specific building types, you also have exterior applied products. And the intent here is that occupants of schools and hospitals tend to be outside the building as well as inside, so you want to control those VOC emissions that it might be that the occupant may be near the building envelope. Those exterior applied products do not apply to other rating systems. And the area was just chosen as an example. General emissions evaluation VOC content. You also, I just chose that as an example, but you can also have furniture evaluation. You can have exterior applied products, which would be down in this category. Inherently non-emitting, which is this category. This is for products like tile, concrete, glass, steel. If a product did not fit in that category, you would say yes, and then you get less of a credit. But if it is in that category, then you have more of a credit. Under general emissions evaluations, you would choose your standard. I just chose the California Department of Public Health, but there are other ones, ISO 16000 and a few others here. And moving down in the calculator, the VOC content, this is very similar or familiar to what we're doing now. We're using the self-close 1113. The limit is 50 in this particular paint. In the example, it's 0, and it tells you if you're VOC content compliant. And then if you had composite wood, it would go in this category. Furniture evaluations go here, and exterior applied products for schools and hospitals would go here. And then finally, you would enter the URL if it had one for LEED to do an audit on if they chose to. And once you fill out that huge calculator, and I forgot to mention under wall types, this wall types is not a petition type. It's wall type means every time you had a different paint sheen, like a semi-gloss or an eggshell, or if you had 2 layers of paint versus 1, you would have a different wall type. And anytime there was a change in the makeup of that exterior finish, you would have a different wall type. This could be a very involved process. So I don't see the budget calculation method being used in the future. The product category calculations is far simpler, and this budget calculation method will probably go away because it's so complex. And finally, under option 1 and 2, you get your results, and you transfer these results onto the LEED form, and that's where you get your final point disposition. So that calculator is more complex than the MR calculator. And I'm showing, for example, third-party certifications and labels that would be used under low-emitting materials. And here's a familiar California Department of Public Health, or will be familiar. But there's also Blue Angel, BIFMA, Blue Angel, NSF, National Sanitation Foundation, and Indoor Comfort Gold, as well as these 2 third-party certifications. And we're going to touch upon the new daylight credit. The methodology here is used SDA, Spatial Daylight Autonomy, is a sophisticated daylight modeling. And it means that the percentage of work plane that is about 300 lux or 28-foot candles, at least 50% of the occupied hours of a year. You definitely want a calculator to do all this number crunching, but once it's filled in, it's very clean, and it gives you results without any controversy. You can still use this other method. It's still allowed luminance calculation options, but it's very complex. And you can also still do the indoor light measurements, but it's become more stringent. You need to use more than 2 points per measurements, and you have to have 2 measurements at different times of year. So if you did one in January, you have to do it again in June, and that's going to hold up the LEED registration. So most likely, these 2 options will not be used, but it'll be more of the new SDA option. And finally, someone asked about the calculators. So I'm going to bring you to that site. This is the new LEED version 4 site. And it is very intuitive. You choose your category, and here I'm going to choose new construction. It has all the rating systems. And you apply, and it comes out with strictly new construction. Prior to that, it had every single rating system, so it would take a while to figure out where things were. And you can download the form as well as calculators if they're used in the credit. So here, for example, is the low-emitting materials calculator, and as well, it does have the building product disclosure and optimization calculator right offline. So everything is handy. You don't have to have a LEED registered project to access this information. It's just usgbc.org sample forms will bring you right to that site. Okay, Matt, did I go offline? Matt?
No, Richard, you're still there. Just pull back up your
Oh,
PowerPoint
there.
there.
Yeah, I caught that. Thank you. And I want to show a LEED AP version 4 form. Again, very simple. You choose your rating system, you choose your units of measurement, and people often ask, why bother to upgrade? Well, here's one reason. If you want to sign off on this LEED AP form, which is the last credit in the rating system, you now have to have a rating specific to that rating system. And in this case, if it's building design construction, you have to have LEED AP building design construction to sign off on the form, as is stipulated here in the instructions. The instructions are given on this outside right-hand column, and then you can earn the point. But other than that, there's no specific reason why you have to upgrade, other than wanting to stay current with the LEED standards. And here's a checklist. I highly recommend that you view this checklist, and there are many opportunities to learn more about LEED version 4. It's not a easy rating system to digest in 1 hour. And I have some references here. LEED version 4 user guide is a very good resource. Sample credit forms I just showed you. Use the website platform. Is on this website. If you want to learn more about demand response, here's a good website in partnership with new construction energy performance of LEED for new construction buildings. That study by New Buildings Institute is here, newbuildings.org. And finally, Building Green has an excellent white paper on new concepts and LEED version 4, and you can also earn CEUs at this website. And I'll have this up after I sign off. So here are our learning objectives reviewed. Underlying principles shift from avoiding impacts to improved environmental incomes, performance connections, overall integrated design or integrative design in water and energy metering, product transparencies, these new environmental product declarations and health product declarations, and the new concepts in EQ referring to the California Department of Public Health and third-party certifications. And are there any questions? Matt, we still have a few minutes to sign off.
All right. Well, I have one here we've been holding off on just to let you go through. Question here going back to the MR section potentially. Scott had heard of a whole building LCA analysis to get up to 3 points. Is that an option for getting more MR points in addition to the 2 EPD routes?
Well, if it is, it's not within the new LEED version 4 rating system. It may be a pilot program or an innovation credit, but I haven't heard of that. I know that EPDs are shorthand life cycle analysis, so if you had a full analysis, it probably would warrant an innovation point, but I'm not aware of that being an option under the new version 4 rating system.
Okay.
Richard, Mark here. One note to specification writers who are on the call. I think up until now, LEED compliance, the design team has passed it to the specifier, make sure everything works, make sure the adhesives and the paints have the right VOC, put in FSC wood, put in a white roof. With the new documentation requirements for the materials and resources, the design team is going to have to take that responsibility on themselves, because no specifier can really set up their guide specifications, their office master specifications, like every 100 miles as to what product is made where. So it's really going to fall to the lead administrator, in my opinion, to tell the specification writer what changes really need to be made to the specifications for the credits that you showed the spreadsheets for. It's just not something you can do automatically. It's too difficult.
Yeah, I'll second that, Mark. And as a lead consultant myself, I would advise my clients not to count on the 100-mile radius requirement for building products. That definitely is a situation where if you happen to be in the right place, then you get some credit for one product, but you can't guide specifications based on that. And that's not the intent. It's moving away from that, and you get additional bonus if the product happened to be manufactured in raw materials within 100 miles, but the intent now is more transparency to what's actually in the product in life cycle analysis.
And with the requirement about the EPDs from 20 manufacturers, that means the people who make small dollar items can still contribute. And it's the same way with the current LEED version, where rapidly renewable materials, that credit is rarely sought. I think you're going to find the materials credit less often sought.
Yeah, and vice versa, the bio-based materials are more sought because now it's not based on dollars, it's based on whether you meet the standard.
All right, we have another question coming in here from Drew. He's wondering, does USGVC track and publish which credit areas are most often achieved within LEED certification on projects? And then there's a second question, but I'll ask that after this first one.
They certainly do. They track these credits very closely. So they know, for example, which ones to audit and which ones not to bother with, because they do track as they go through the certification of projects. But they don't make that public, if that's the question.
There are probably a few places where you could Google LEED credits earned, and you'd find a breakdown. I've seen various ones published over time. Yeah,
what's earned, that may be published, but not LEED-specific information on which ones are audited and which ones are not. But there's certainly information out there to tell you which ones have been. And the second question?
Yeah, and the second question is, for people who wish to take advantage of the EPD credits, where could they find a list of all products with EPDs? And then parentheses, at this point, he thinks the best practice to find EPDs would be the program operator websites?
Yes, UL, for example, is a program operator. I'm going to switch up the slide to that.
I believe our Green Wizard has announced that they're going to keep a list, but that may be something the manufacturer has to pay for.
Yeah, Green Wizard cradle-to-cradle lists EPDs, UL. Certainly the program providers will list their products, and you can really go to the actual product manufacturer and just punch in EPDs, and if they have one, they'll certainly it'll show up. There is not that many at this point in time, but as we get closer to June 2015, more and more manufacturers will be getting EPDs. Actually, they have a rush on program providers right now to get these in the works.
And buildinggreen.com and greenwizard.com have good articles and resources on this.
Okay, Matt, if there's no other questions, we're a few minutes to the end of the hour, but we can close here.
At this point, I don't have any additional questions. There was a thank you from Joseph saying one of the best sustainability practice group sessions he's been on. So kudos to you, Richard, for the research you did.
Yes, it is involved, and you're not going to learn it in an hour. I mean, this is just a sampling of the information. But I do find myself, as we go into the forms and look what information they're actually asking you to put into the calculator so you can get a better sense of how it works. And they're available on USGBC sample forms, as I pointed out.
Well, thank you, Richard, because this must have taken an enormous amount of time to put together. I know you did a trial run of this a couple days ago for CSI Boston, and the group was very active with the questions. It went on and on and on, ranging from manufacturers wondering how they could have EPDs written for their product to specifiers wondering which of the green consultants were going to step up to help with these credits.
Yes, there was a lot of questions about that. How you create an EPD. And one advice was to go to the trade organization themselves. So, for example, if you have a ceiling tile, you go to that trade organization, and they may have a template for an EPD that you can start with. So that's the first place to start.
Yeah, in order to have a EPD, you have to have product category rules, so the PCRs are generally sort of association-driven.
Right, and then the second option is to go directly to these providers and get their sense of how you can approach an EPD.
Well, thank you again. Really appreciate your work on this.
With that, thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Richard and Mark. You may now disconnect and go back to your work. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.